I was on my midnight shift, patrolling the familiar streets of our small town. I'd been doing this for years, and I thought I'd seen it all. But that night felt different, and I've never stopped thinking about it. The sky was clear, and the moon shone brightly. I drove slowly, passing the old school on the outskirts. Suddenly, the radio crackled. Dispatch reported strange lights in the abandoned building. I figured it might be kids messing around. I parked my car and stepped outside. The cool air bit at my skin, sending a chill down my spine. Maybe it was just the night that I walked toward the school, my flashlight beam flickering against the cracked walls. It was too quiet. I called out, "Anyone here?" No response. Just silence. I shined my light around, half expecting to catch someone, but nothing. Just darkness. Then I saw them footprints. They weren't mine. They were larger and leading away into the woods. My chest tightened as I decided to follow them. The branches crunched under my feet. As I ventured deeper, I heard sound behind me. Was it my imagination? I spun around, but nobody was there. It felt wrong. I felt exposed. The next few days were a blur. Reports came in missing pets, strange noises, and locals claiming they saw shadows at the forest's edge. I tried to focus, but the more I heard, the more the weight of fear settled over me. I kept thinking about those footprints. Where did they go? One evening, I was sitting at the diner. Locals were talking in hushed tones, their voices trembling. I overheard a woman say she saw something staring at her from the woods. A chill crept down my spine. I wanted to dismiss it as just a wild imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That night, I decided to go back to the woods. I parked my car where the footprints had led me. As I walked, the trees loomed tall, casting long shadows in the moonlight. I felt a shiver crawl down my back, as if someone was watching me. Then I heard a rustle behind me and turned quickly. There stood a figure, a silhouette. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaky, but there was no reply. My heart raced as I felt the tension in the air. The figure stepped closer. "Who are you?" I shouted, panic rising in my throat. He spoke softly. "Why are you looking for me?" My stomach dropped. I turned to run, but I tripped over something and fell. As I hit the ground, everything went dark. I'm still not sure what happened that night. The air felt heavy, and I could feel those eyes watching me. When I managed to stand again, the figure was gone. I never saw it again, but I can still feel that chill. It haunts me. Why was I looking for it? I don't know, but I still dread those quiet nights in my small town. The following day, I tried to push the incident out of my mind. I needed to focus on my job. But every time I drove past the old school, a knot tightened in my stomach. I was leapfrogging from fear to anxiety, and it wasn't helping anyone. I decided to check in with the locals in town. Maybe someone had seen something else. At the diner, I sat at the counter, flipped through my notes, and listened. The same stories were circulating: a dog seen running off, strange noises echoing in the night. But one gentleman caught my ear. He was an older man, hunched over his coffee, muttering about something that had happened when he was a boy. "I saw it too," he exclaimed, abruptly capturing the attention of others. "The creature in the woods. My friends and I swore we saw eyes watching us." His words hung heavy in the air. "We thought it was just a legend," he continued, his voice a whisper, but it never went away. Everyone in the diner fell quiet. I felt compelled to ask him more. "What did you see?" I questioned, maintaining my composure. His gaze hardened, and he leaned closer. "They say there are 5 rules you have to follow when something strange happens. If you ignore them—" He paused, eyes darting to the window as if something lurked outside. "Well, let us just say you might not make it back." The urge to laugh it off bubbled inside me, but the way the others looked shook me. No one challenged him. "What are the rules?" I pressed. He gradually spoke each one, counting on his fingers. 1. Don't go into the woods at night. 2. Don't call out to it. 3. Never shine a light where it doesn't belong. 4. Listen for the sounds. Don't try to make sense of them. And finally, 5. If you see it, run and don't look back. I shook my head, half skeptical but also unnerved. Where did these rules come from? From those that didn't follow them. Trust me, young man. It's better not to know. Just stay close to home. I left the diner, feeling uneasy. The sun was already dipping behind the horizon, painting the sky orange and purple. I clutched my notes, replaying the old man's rules in my mind like a mantra. Just then, an urgent call came in on the radio. A few blocks away, someone claimed they saw a flickering light coming from the forest. My instincts screamed at me to ignore it, but something in me pushed back. It was my job to find out what was happening. As I drove toward the call, I recalled the rules, particularly the last one. If I saw it, would I run? A part of me wanted to turn back, but my curiosity pulled me forward. I parked my car and stepped into the thickening twilight, feeling the chills settle over the trees. That's when I saw it. A flash of light flickered between the branches, pulling me deeper into the woods. I hesitated, heart pounding. Would I follow the light or heed the warnings I had just heard? In that moment, it felt like everything rested on my next choice. I took a deep breath, decided to go after it, and stepped forward. I had a feeling I wouldn't like what I found. The light danced ahead of me, wavering like a candle caught in a draft. With every step, the undergrowth crunched beneath my feet, but the sound felt swallowed by the stillness of the forest. I wanted to turn back, to heed those warnings that loomed in my mind, but curiosity pulled me closer. As I moved forward, shadows twisted around me. The trees stood tall and ancient, cloaking secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover. The flicker grew brighter, casting an eerie glow that attracted me. Yet something gnawed at my instincts. The tales of the old man echoed in my mind. I stopped. This isn't right, I whispered to myself. But just as I considered retreating, the light suddenly vanished. My heart raced. The change felt ominous, like the forest held its breath. I strained to listen, but my ears filled with the silence of the woods. Then, I heard a faint rustling, like leaves shifting. Panic surged through me. I recalled the fourth rule: don't try to make sense of the sounds. But how could I not? My curiosity felt like a wild flame, urging me to investigate. I squinted into the darkness. "Hello," I called out, and the word echoed back to me. Instantly, the hairs on my neck stood up. I cursed under my breath. I just broke rule number 2. The rustling grew louder, closer. My throat tightened. "Schuld, Vedan." I turned to retrace my steps when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Something shifted between the trees, a form that was too big to be an animal. I froze. Then, from deep in the woods came a sound. It was a low, guttural growl, reverberating like thunder through the stillness. My gut twisted. I remembered the man's warning. If you see it, run and don't look back. But my legs felt heavy, as if cement anchored me to the ground. Just then, a beam of light broke through the trees. I squinted, half blinded by its intensity. It illuminated the area around me, revealing nothing but branches and shadows, but the growl became a snarl. I couldn't see whatever it was, but the malevolence radiated like heat from a fire. My heart raced, and a primal instinct kicked in. I turned and ran, ignoring every urge to look back. The underbrush slapped at my legs as I sprinted, branches clawing at my arms. Fear propelled me through the darkness, and every second felt like an eternity. The weight of those rules hung over me, pressing down. I couldn't get caught, that much I knew. Finally, I burst through the tree line, gasping for breath. The light from my car illuminated the scene, and I fumbled for my radio. Sweat dripped down my brow, and panic surged again as I glanced back into the woods, heart pounding in my chest. But there was nothing, not even the familiar sounds of night. I was alone, or maybe not. I caught my breath. Adrenaline faded, revealing a gnawing sense of dread. What had I just escaped? The flickering light was a lure, a warning, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. In the distance, the sirens blared a haunting tune, pulling me back to the reality I had neglected. I needed to gather my thoughts. I had to figure out what I just witnessed. The old man's rules were starting to feel less like folklore and more like reality. But how far down this rabbit hole would I go? As I sat in my car, shaking, I realized I had more questions than answers, and my next move would be critical. I sat in my car, the engine humming softly, but it did little to soothe my rattled nerves. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, the faint glow of the dashboard lights casting a ghostly illumination on my face. I stared out into the darkness where I had just fled from something I couldn't understand. The looming trees stood tall and silent, seemingly watching me. The sirens had stopped. Silence enveloped everything, and it stretched on, heavy and thick. I took a deep breath, willing my heartbeat to slow. I needed to stay focused. If I wanted to make sense of this, I had to take action. I pulled out my phone. I hesitated for a moment. Should I call someone? Who would believe me? Instead, I opened my notes app and began typing. Saw a light in the woods. Felt something watching me. There was my mind scrambled to align my thoughts a growl. I bit my lip, a mix of fear and disbelief flooding my system. What if they didn't take me seriously? What if they thought I was overreacting? Just then, a flicker caught my eye to the side. I whipped my head around, and I froze. There, at the very edge of the tree line, was a figure bathed in moonlight. It stood motionless, almost unnatural against the backdrop of the dense vegetation. My heart thundered again, but I couldn't look away. I blinked hard, hoping against hope that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But no, it was still there, an outline of a person or something that resembled one staring at me. Panic raced through my veins. I pressed the lock button on my car, as if it could somehow create a barrier between me and whatever was out there. Suddenly, the figure stepped forward. My instinct screamed at me to drive away. Yet, curiosity, that overwhelming need to understand, rooted me in place. What was it? A local? Someone who got lost? Then, I remembered another rule the old man had mentioned. If you see something strange, don't approach. I had to call for help. I dialed the station number, my fingers shaky as I tried to focus on the sound of ringing. The call went to voicemail. My stomach dropped. The only thing I could think of was getting out of there. Now, just as I started the engine, the figure raised its hand, pointing directly at my car. A chill ran down my spine. I was frozen in place again, gripped by the fear of the unknown. The urgency of it felt suffocating. That S when I saw it again. A flash of light between the trees, the same flickering I'd seen before. But this time, it wasn't the same. The light pulsed rapidly, like a heartbeat, and filled the air with a low humming noise. It felt alive. An instinct told me it wasn't a simple phenomenon, and the oppressive pull of dread twisted in my gut. Just go, I murmured to myself. With a sharp breath, I threw the car into gear and tore down the gravel road, gravel spraying behind me like a flurry of warnings. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been waiting in the dark was still watching. As I rounded a corner, I barely had time to process the sense of relief when I spotted something else, an old van overturned on the side of the road, glowing under the eerie light of the moon. I skidded to a stop, my heart racing once more. This was just bad luck. This was something worse. That S when I noticed the words scrawled in red paint across the side of the van. Trust in '01. My stomach churned. What did that even mean? I thought I could deal with one mystery, but suddenly, everything felt interconnected. This was far more than I had bargained for. And deep down, I knew I had to find out more before it was too late. I sat there for a moment, heart racing as I stared at the van. It felt like a warning, a message meant for me alone. My hands were clammy against the steering wheel. Should I get out and investigate? I felt the prickling fear again, reminding me of the figure in the woods. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door, stepping out into the cold night air. The gravel crunched under my boots, loud in the stillness. The moonlight illuminated the van, and I could see shattered glass glinting like lost stars scattered on the dirt. It was old, the tires deflated, weeds creeping up around the chassis. I approached slowly, each step sending a jolt through my nerves. I hesitated before leaning down to peer into the van's open door. Inside, the seats were tattered, and a pile of dusty belongings lay strewn across the floor. But it was the crumpled papers that caught my eye. I reached in, careful not to touch anything that might be covered in something unknown. As I pulled them out, I felt the surface cool against my fingers. The crumpled sheets revealed drawings. Strange symbols I didn't recognize. Some looked like a mix of animal shapes and lines I couldn't understand. Goosebumps crawled on my arms. Why were these here? Had someone been using this van for something? From the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the woods, and I instinctively turned my head. That same flickering light was back, pulsing between the trees. My heart dropped. I needed to get back to my car and leave, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being observed. Just then, the van's door creaked as the wind tugged at it. I jumped back, the fear rising in my chest. Then I heard a voice, faint but growing clearer. It sounded like a whisper. Panic surged through me. I looked around, but there was no one. "Hello?" I called back, my voice trembling. Silence enveloped me, but the whisper returned, more insistent this time. I stepped back, the urge to run clawing at me. My mind raced through the implications, but I couldn't ignore the plea. Was someone or something trapped in there? Or was it another lure, another trap waiting to ensnare me? In the back of my mind, the old man's words echoed. Trust no one. I made up my mind. I would not approach whatever that voice belonged to. But I couldn't just leave without knowing if someone was in danger. The conflict twisted my stomach in knots. I moved toward my car, quickening my pace, but just as I reached it, I glanced back at the van. That whisper echoed again, but this time it was sharper, more desperate. "Help me," then everything shifted. The pulsing light flared brighter, illuminating the forest with an unnatural glow. It felt alive, almost breathing. My instincts kicked in. I jumped into my car, slamming the door behind me. I fumbled with the ignition, but my fingers were too shaky to find the keyhole. The air inside the car felt charged, thick with fear. Then it happened. The lights surged once more, and I could make out the figure in the woods again. Not just one, but several now, moving closer, their outlines flickering against the trees. And just like that, the reality hit me. I wasn't alone anymore. They were coming. I sat frozen in the car, the engine still quiet and my thoughts racing. The eerie glow from the woods pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. Shadows darted between the trees, but I could make out shapes, definitely shapes. Panic clawed at my throat. Who were they? What do they want? I suddenly wondered about the whispers, the van, and the symbols. Was I about to find out? I finally got the key in the ignition and twisted it. The engine sputtered to life. I exhaled deeply, relieved, but there wasn't time to relax. My hands moved on their own, finding the gear shift. I needed to get out of there, but just as I shifted into drive, a loud thud resonated against the back of the car. I jumped, panic flooding my mind. I turned to look through the back window, my heart in my throat. The light from the woods was gone. In its place stood a solid dark outline against my rearview mirror. It was right there. I could barely breathe. Go, go, go. I muttered to myself, slamming the gas pedal. The car lurched forward, but it didn't move. Some dread, certainty washed over me. Something was blocking the way, that I barely glanced at the trees as I turned my head around to see what was happening. That figure was still there, and now more shapes were emerging, creeping closer. My instinct screamed for me to pull away, but my eyes were wide, caught in a terrible fascination. Suddenly, a loud thump hit the trunk, another jolt. This wasn't just an animal or a tree. I had to know. Gripped by a mix of dread and morbid curiosity, I glanced back once more. The shadows seemed to thicken, almost taking form. They wore dark clothing, and then I saw one of them squatted low to the ground, its head tilting unnaturally as if trying to see me through the window. My stomach churned. "Drive!" I screamed. The command was barely a whisper. I yanked the wheel hard left, and the tires squealed against the gravel. The vehicle swerved, but gained momentum. As I angled out of the clearing, I noticed my headlights sweeping over something lying on the road, a small bundle, maybe a backpack, or I hit the brakes hard, throwing myself forward against the seatbelt. The tire screeched. My heart raced with confusion and fear as I stared ahead. There was no way I could abandon whatever that was. I needed to know, but before I could process it, that figure had stepped out from the woods into the beam of my headlights, fully illuminated. It wore a hood that shadowed their face, and in that moment, it reached a hand toward me, palm open. "What are you doing?" I shouted, adrenaline surging. "Stay back." Suddenly, another figure emerged beside it, and then another. They surrounded me. I was trapped, just like that voice had hinted. I turned back to my rearview mirror, desperate to find an escape. The darkness loomed large behind me, blocking any chance of retreat. I was stuck between what was familiar, the safety of my town, and the unknown whispers and shadows at the edge of the woods. Then they began to speak, their voices low yet urgent, blending together into one chilling message. Help us, and with rising fear, I found myself asking, what do you want from me? That was when I realized the weight of their plea was heavy. Each word sent a jolt through me. I was about to become a part of something far more complex than I had ever anticipated. The figures closed in, their shadows stretching on the pavement like dark fingers reaching for me. I felt trapped, breathing shallowly, panic choking me. The more they advanced, the more I realized they weren't just figures. They looked like people, yet they seemed so wrong. Their movements were jerky, unnatural. I blinked hard, hoping this was some kind of nightmare I could wake from. Help us, they continued, their voices swirling like a gust of wind. It echoed in my head, a mix of desperation and urgency that made my skin crawl. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, desperate to clear my thoughts. Why? What do you need from me? I blurted out. I was shouting now. My voice was shaky but loud against the night, demanding answers. One of them took a step closer. A glint of moonlight caught the edge of a knife in their hand. I gasped, instinct kicking in as I instinctively shifted the car into reverse. The vehicle lurched backward, and I gripped the wheel with white knuckles. But before I could accelerate, a hand slammed against my window. I froze, the contact jarring. His face was pale, eyes wide and pleading. It didn't match his threatening posture. We're not here to hurt you, he yelled, his voice breaking. We need to get out. His words only deepened my fear. If they needed to leave, what was chasing them? The woods seemed to breathe around us. I felt like prey caught between a predator and a trap. Just go. Another voice shouted from behind. I could see more shapes gathering by the trees, their edges blending into the darkness. Each moment I hesitated felt like drowning. I couldn't stay here. I slammed my foot on the gas, the wheels spinning in place before finally grabbing grip. The car jolted forward, and I felt a sense of urgency amplify my panic. I swerved past the figures, who scattered into the trees. I could still hear them yelling, but the farther I got, the more distant their pleas became. As I burst out of the clearing, my heart raced with adrenaline and fear. I had no idea where I was going. I just had to get away from that darkness. The headlights illuminated a narrow road ahead, trees rushing past as I drove like I was being pursued. 10 minutes later, I slowed down, trying to catch my breath. I pulled into a roadside diner that was barely lit and flickering like a dying ember. Familiarity washed over me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Once inside, the warmth enveloped me, but I still felt spine-tingling cold from the encounter. The few customers eyed me with curiosity, but I couldn't even meet their gaze. I slid into a booth, hands trembling, and tried to collect myself. That when I saw it on the corner of the table, a crumpled piece of paper. I reached for it, my heart jumping again as I unfolded it. Someone had written something in shaky letters. They're coming for you. Trust no one. A chill swept through me, and as I looked up, I realized someone was standing at the entrance. My breath caught in my throat again as a shadow moved closer. It was one of them. Where did you go? The figure asked, their voice low and filled with urgency. Panic surged as I backed away, realizing I was trapped again. The figure stepped closer, and I felt my breath hitch in my throat. It was the same man I'd seen outside my car. His face looked even more disheveled up close, eyes wide like he hadn't slept in days. The knife was gone, but that didn't ease my fear. You shouldn't have come here, he said, urgency dripping from each word. Why not? I shot back, trying to match his intensity. You were the ones chasing me. What do you want? His expression shifted, and he glanced nervously at the diner patrons. A few turned to look at us, their curiosity turning into something more sinister, and I felt the weight of their stares like sharpened knives. You shouldn't trust anyone here. They don't understand, he said, his voice low. They think it will be safe, but it's not. Safe from what? I asked, wishing I could somehow step away from this moment, from him, from all of it. The woods, he hissed. They're alive, and they want us. He gestured wildly, as if the very trees outside could reach through the walls and grab us. Alive? I repeated, skeptical and terrified. I couldn't tell if he was losing it or if maybe there was some truth buried under his desperation. Just then, the door swung open again, cutting through our conversation. A gust of wind rushed in, and I caught a glimpse of more figures in the distance, their faces obscured by shadows. Panic surged within me. I could feel it creeping up my spine, tightening my throat. I suddenly remembered the crumpled note. "You're paranoid," I blurted out, trying to deflect the fear into anger. "What do you even know? Are you even real?" It was silly, but the question slipped out before I could stop it. "You'll think I'm mad until it's too late," he said, and I sensed a flicker of sadness in his eyes. "They're coming for you because you saw us. You need to get away before night falls completely." Before I could respond, the diner-esque lights flickered once more, casting an eerie glow on everything. The other customers were silent now, their eyes glued to the figures outside, as if transfixed by some magnetism that we couldn't see. Then it happened. A loud crash reverberated from the back of the diner. Everyone jumped, and instinctively my heart raced again. "What was that?" I whispered. "They know you're here," he warned, looking back toward the entrance. "If you run, they follow. If you stay," he shook his head, eyes wide. I felt trapped. I wanted to bolt, but I was paralyzed with indecision. Just then, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. A shadow slipped through the doorway, a new figure. Something in me screamed to move. I needed to decide, and fast. I couldn't shake the feeling that the real danger was about to reveal itself. I didn't know whether to scream or run. The new figure paused inside the diner's threshold, silhouetted against the fading light outside. My heart hammered in my chest as I caught glimpses of sharp features and a brimmed hat that concealed most of the face. My instinct kicked in. Something was terribly wrong. "Who is that?" I whispered, my voice barely above a hush. The man beside me didn't answer. He just stared, eyes fixed on this newcomer, as if the very act of blinking might provoke a response. The tension in the diner thickened. Patrons shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their meals forgotten. I felt as if I were part of a surreal tableau. Time suspended, anticipation hanging heavy in the air. Another crash came from the back. This time it sounded closer, more chaotic. I glanced at the man beside me. "We have to get out of here," I urged, my voice trembling. His expression twisted with something that looked dangerously close to panic. "If we run now, what other choice do we have?" I interrupted. "Staying one help us." Before he could respond, the newcomer stepped forward, revealing a face that sent chills rippling down my spine. His eyes were wild, darting around the diner before locking onto mine. "You're in great danger," he declared, voice strained. The man beside me nodded, as if he recognized this newcomer. "What are they after?" he asked, his voice barely steady. The newcomer turned his attention to him. "They want you. And her." He pointed at me, and my breath caught. My stomach dropped. I had signed up for being hunted. "We can't discuss it here. We need to move, and fast." That when the lights flickered again, plunging the diner into darkness for a heartbeat. Gasps erupted around us, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer, reaching in, clawing at the edges of my sanity. "Now!" the newcomer shouted, breaking the momentary spell of darkness. I felt something primal kick in. Fear ignited my veins, pushing me toward the door. I turned. My eyes fell on the opposite side of the diner. Figures were gathering dark, shifting forms against the waning daylight. My heart raced. "Who are they?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. "Those who listen to the woods," the newcomer said, his voice urgent. "They want to keep you, to protect their secrets." "Secrets?" I gasped. "What secrets?" But before he could answer, an unmistakable sound crashed through the din, the sound of wood splintering. The patrons recoiled, fear writ large on their faces. I didn't just feel trapped. I was trapped. "Listen to me," the newcomer implored, eyes fierce. "Forget your questions for now. We need to get to the back of the kitchen. It's the only way out." I hesitated, fear tangling with the instinct to survive. I stole a glance at the man beside me. He met my gaze, and in his expression, I saw the urgency mirrored. In that moment, clarity broke through my trepidation. I nodded. "We go," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Together, we moved swiftly, pushing through the diner towards the chaos at the back, knowing the woods were watching and time was running out. But before we reached the door, everything went dark. The darkness engulfed us, a thick blanket stifling the air around me. Panic surged through every inch of my being. I hadn't seen the ground beneath my feet, felt the tight grip of my companions beside me. There were no landmarks, no sounds of nearby breaths, and the world outside slipped away. It felt like being cast adrift in an infinite void. But just as quickly as the darkness descended, it shattered, replaced by a flash so fierce it seared into my vision, blinding me for an instant. As the light receded, I stumbled, disoriented. My breath came in ragged gasps, and instinctively I turned to make sense of my surroundings. The diner was gone. Instead, I found myself amidst towering trees, their bark glistening in ethereal hues. The air buzzed with energy. The familiar cacophony of the forest now vibrated with something deeper. "Stay close." The voice of my companion reached me through the wilderness, panic woven into his urgency. I nodded, though I could barely see him through the swirling mists. We moved closer together, understanding the weight of our precarious situation. "Where are we?" I managed to ask, my voice shaky, laced with confusion. "The woods," he said. "The rules are different here." We must. Before he could finish, a growl erupted from the depths of the trees, a sound more feral than anything I'd encountered. I felt it resonate in my bones, a warning. The figures we had glimpsed in the diner suddenly emerged from the shadows, their forms shifting and twisting, illuminated only by ghostly light. They bore faces that twisted in agony and despair, and as they closed in, I felt the chill of their eyes upon me. "Keep running," the newcomer shouted, and the urgency within his tone sent adrenaline surging through me again. We sprinted deeper, dodging around trees and underbrush, desperately trying to escape whatever hunted us. The thundering sounds of pursuit echoed behind us, growing louder, more aggressive. But then, as we barreled forward, time seemed to slip. The ground shifted unevenly beneath our feet, prompting glimpses of vibrant colors and strange symbols drawn in the air, a map of horrors etched into the landscape. My mind struggled to make sense of it, wrestling with the supernatural pull that tugged at my rational thoughts. Suddenly, I stumbled into a clearing. A swirl of mist rose around us like a living creature, and my breath caught as I recognized that familiar flickering light deep within it, the same beacon that had drawn me to the woods in the first place. "Over there," my companion yelled, pointing toward the pulsing light. It seemed almost inviting, beckoning us closer. But then the figures from before coalesced into clearer forms, their faces turned toward me with anticipation, their mouths whispering in dissonance. "Help us," they chanted, voices overlapping in a wave of urgency. "What do you want?" I shouted, desperation lacing my words. "Choose," one of them screeched, the voice echoing like a frightful clarion call. "Join us or escape." I felt the weight of their entreaty hanging in the air, a chilling promise that held no value as fear vividly encased my heart. Around us, the forest appeared both alive and dormant, a battlefield of decisions, their consequences tangible and murky at the same time that I hesitated, torn between fleeing into the unknown or yielding to the inexplicable call. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows, unfamiliar, yet oddly significant, radiating an authority I couldn't quite explain. "Run." The command hit me hard. I didn't recognize the voice, but it sparked a flame of instinct within me. Without thinking, I turned and sprinted toward the darkness beyond the clearing. I could feel the rush of chilling air behind me, the pounding footsteps of those who pursued me amplifying my urgency, and my breath came in sharp bursts, each inhale heavy with dread as I burst through the edge of foliage and into a blur of moonlight. Ahead, I could finally see the outline of my car parked at the roadside. I skidded to a halt, fumbling for my keys as I approached, but behind me, the sounds of chaos grew. Louder. I flung the door open and jumped inside, heart racing and hands trembling as I fought to start the engine. Shadows swirled in the periphery, eyes watching from the trees, but everything felt unnaturally static as I finally turned the key and the engine roared to life that I drove away, heart pounding with each turn I took, desperate to escape the grasp of the forest. The road stretched before me, familiar yet alien. As the lights of my town finally came into view, a weight lifted, yet beneath it lingered a gnawing doubt. What had I truly experienced? Were the woods alive with secrets, or was it all a reflection of my own fears? I glanced back at the rearview mirror. The trees stood silhouetted against the night, their shadows whispering promises I couldn't comprehend. Their dark significance loomed larger than the quiet town enveloped in the glow of streetlights ahead. I moved to a different city the very next week. I still think about my time there, the warmth of the diner, the frantic faces, and the uncertainty that had clasped at my heart. Sometimes, late at night, I find myself casting uneasy glances at the woods beyond the horizon, wondering what those figures were truly seeking. What do they want from me? Would they ever truly leave me alone? But mostly I try not to think about it.